I have a little secret I want to share with you related to health. If you want to be healthy, just find out what conventional medicine is all agreeing on and do the exact opposite. Because what you've been told about health is actually the opposite of what the truth is. And a lot of times these experts in these institutions are like sacred cows. They're above criticism. You're not supposed to criticize them because then you're opposing science. But unfortunately, our health has become very, very political. And some of the information that I'm going to share with you today comes from the website NHS. This is the National Health Services from the UK. They get 50 million visitors every single month. I mean, it just blows me away. Well, at least they're transparent, because if you look at the board of directors and you see their affiliations, quite a few of them are affiliated with drug companies. All right, let's get to the list. Number one, everything in moderation. There is no bad food. Healthy eating is all about balance. Have you ever heard that before? Now, the problem with that statement is that it gives each food equal importance. And so what you're saying is there's no real significant difference between a candy bar and kale, or wild-caught salmon and a Twinkie. As long as you keep everything in moderation, you'll be healthy. I'm sorry, this is just complete and utter stupidity. Certain foods are way more healthier than others, and you don't want to do a moderate diet where you're having a little bit of everything. That has been the problem. When you go to an all-you-can-eat buffet and you're just going to have a little bit of everything, you're not going to be able to get healthy. There's too many options for the wrong thing, and you want to be able to differentiate the high carb from the low carb. The way to get healthy is not to balance your calories. It's to be able to differentiate the healthier foods from the unhealthy. So it's a very unbalanced diet. All right, number two, make sure you don't skip your meals, and definitely never skip breakfast. Now, I used to recommend this in my first book. I don't recommend it anymore. I found that if you skip breakfast, you will become very, very healthy. And the reason that they say this, you have to have regular meals, is to somehow prevent snacking later in the day. This is actually very deadly advice, because every time you eat, you spike insulin. And the majority of the population has way too much insulin because of the frequent meals. We want to skip meals. In fact, skipping meals is one of the healthiest things you can ever do, especially if you skip breakfast. The big problem that people have is the frequency of eating. Our bodies were not designed to eat so darn frequently. It's very, very unnatural, and it's extremely unhealthy. In fact, I would say it's the worst thing you can do for your health. All right, number three, the only way to lose weight is to eat less calories than you burn. You want to create an energy deficit. Calories in equals calories out. I'm sorry, if I hear that again, I'm going to vomit. This is like so outdated. We know it doesn't work. People have tried this for decades. And again, whoever came up with this is not differentiating the different type of calories. Certain calories are greatly affected by certain hormones, yet other calories are affected differently. In fact, insulin, the main hormone that makes you fat, is greatly affected by carbs, yet it's not affected at all by pure fat. Pure fat does not trigger insulin. Now, with protein, protein moderately affects insulin. So carbs have a major spike in insulin, protein is a moderate, and fat is zero. And if you're trying to lose weight and trying to be healthy, the goal is to keep your insulin as low as possible. So these experts that are pushing this calories in, calories out, obviously have not worked with any real patients for any period of time, because if they did, they would go out of business. As soon as you start using this principle with any significant amount of people, you're not going to get any results. All right, number four, the low fat, the fat-free, the lean protein, consume less saturated fats, consume less cholesterol, because we all know that cholesterol is bad for the heart. Well, we know this has finally been disproven, and we've been trying to do the fat-free thing forever. It doesn't work. What happens when you go low fat is you just replace it with the carbohydrates. Consuming saturated fats is totally healthy as long as you keep your carbs low. And the thing about cholesterol is that if we were to evaluate the cholesterol in your body right now, 75% of it is made by your own body. Only 25% of the cholesterol in your bloodstream right now comes from diet. When you eat less, your body makes more. When you eat more, your body makes less. If you have high cholesterol in your bloodstream, it is not linked to heart disease. And the American Heart Association has acknowledged that, but it's buried in the guidelines. It's not necessarily promoted. In fact, when you go low fat, you dry up your bile in your gallbladder, and then you're at risk for gallstones. In fact, when you have very, very lean protein and low fat protein, you start to spike insulin a lot more. All right, number 5, and this is what everyone knows is true. High salt diets are very, very dangerous to the heart because everyone knows a high salt diet causes high blood pressure, when in fact, that's absolutely positively not true. There's some fascinating data that's kind of embarrassing for the medical profession. It's a very, very large, credible study. I'll put it down below. That proves that when you go on a low salt diet, you're at more risk for heart disease than if you add more salt. So at a very bare minimum, even people with high blood pressure need to be consuming at least a tablespoon of sea salt every single day. And I'm talking about sea salt, not table salt. Table salt is a refined product, and they're even finding particles of plastic in table salt. There's aluminum in it. Sometimes they add sugar. So always consume high quality sea salt. And as far as blood pressure goes, instead of lowering your salt, increase your potassium. So even though your salt is a little bit higher, if you have enough potassium, you'll have the right ratios and your blood pressure will do much better. All right, number 6, here's one of those everyone knows. Everyone knows that obesity is a health risk and you need to lose weight so you can become healthy. When in fact, a lot of people that are trying to lose weight, gain it right back. And a lot of them end up destroying the metabolism because out of anything, the frequent dieting over and over and over literally slows your metabolism down to a snail's pace. So just because someone is losing weight doesn't necessarily mean they're any healthier. Let's say, for example, you lose weight on certain appetite suppressants, or you're losing weight with some low calorie, poor quality type nutrients. You may lose weight temporarily, but you're going to rebound and you're not going to look healthy as you lose weight. It doesn't really solve the problem of weight loss. So the truth is, get healthy, then lose weight. The weight loss comes as a natural consequence of creating health. Truly healthy people don't accumulate weight. All right, number 7, the brain prefers carbohydrates and glucose. All right, this is also false. The brain actually prefers ketones. In fact, if you feed your brain carbs and glucose, you're going to end up potentially getting dementia, Alzheimer's. It's called diabetes type 3. Ketones bypass the damage in the brain caused by carbohydrates and feed the neurons directly. And this is why when someone gets on a ketogenic diet, their brain works so much better. Their mood is elevated. Their cognitive function, memory, focus, concentration, all improve. In fact, if someone had Alzheimer's, the best diet they should be on is a ketogenic diet. If given the choice between glucose and ketones, if both glucose and ketones are in your blood, your brain will always pick a ketone before a glucose molecule. If you don't believe me, go ahead and get on a ketogenic diet and see how much better your brain feels. All right, number 8, you need to use vegetable oils instead of saturated fats. This advice has caused more heart disease, more problems with the eyes, more problems with diabetes, and more problems with inflammation than any other thing that I know. If you want macular degeneration, just start consuming a lot of omega-6 fatty acids. They're very pro-inflammatory. And vegetable oils sound really healthy, but we're not talking about extracting the oil out of your salad. We're talking about seed oils, okay? Grain seed oils. We're talking about genetically modified corn oil, soy oil, canola oil, cottonseed oil, all heavily sprayed with glyphosate. In fact, from my viewpoint, if you want arthritis, start consuming a diet high in omega-6 fatty acids. Instead, you should do more saturated fats in your cooking and in your food. As long as you keep your carbs low, you're going to be totally fine. All right, number 9, here's another really stupid piece of advice. Make sure you get your complex carbohydrates from whole grains. Now, first of all, I don't think I know anyone that's consuming the whole grains, okay? They usually do refined grains. Problem with grains is they have phytic acid, which blocks the absorption of certain minerals and trace minerals like zinc, which is very, very important. In fact, a very large percent of the population is zinc deficient because they're consuming too many grains. Grains spike insulin, and we already have a problem with insulin, so you want to avoid grains. Not to mention the gluten in the grains that destroys your intestine, creating all sorts of inflammation, which can then increase your risk of autoimmune diseases, which originates from leaky gut. All right, and number 10, you don't really need vitamins as long as you eat a well-balanced diet. And I always want to see what people consider as being a well-balanced diet. It's that balanced, healthy diet that I talked about in number 1, where you keep everything in moderation, don't skip any food groups. You know, when you think about the nutrient requirements that you need, like potassium, rarely does anyone consume enough vegetables to get their potassium. If you really look at it, a very small percent of the population will ever get close to potassium and even magnesium. And also, what about vitamin D? You can't get it from food. Very few people get outside and get out in the sun. So how are you going to get your vitamin D? And not to mention the food. The food is so deficient in nutrients nowadays, especially if you compare it with food 20 years ago. So it is next to impossible to get your vitamins and minerals from your food. Unless you start growing your food yourself and you know how to do your own soils, it is very, very difficult to get your nutrients from food, even if you buy organic. And I will say this, there are so many things out there that were considered safe, healthy, that then we found out was not very safe. It wasn't very healthy. Take a look at the chemical DES that was given to women to prevent miscarriage until they found it started causing miscarriages in women, I don't know how, I think 40, 50 years ago. And then what about DDT? There was a commercial advertisement, DDT is good for me. And then it was banned in 1971. And then what about sugar? Sugar was actually promoted as something that was healthy. You can give it to babies. And now we know that's absolutely not true. What about smoking, right? That was considered okay to give a pregnant woman. Until now, we found that it's actually just the opposite. Now, what about trans fats in Crisco? It was promoted for, I think, 80 or 90 years until they found out, well, we found it wasn't quite healthy. Sorry, and then they banned it. And then we have fluoride that was considered a healthy part of our water supply. And now we're finding all sorts of problems with fluoride on our own physical body, including the thyroid. So the secret to being healthy is find out what everyone else is doing and go in the exact opposite direction. If you want to find out exactly what to eat and what to do, check out this playlist right here. I take you through step by step. Check it out right here.